Chapter 2. Tears and Currents. 3 years don't erase an absence. They refine it, transforming it into a solid and familiar weight that Torin, with his brown hair and green eyes, carried on his shoulders every day, along with the sacks of salt and the barrels of fish. Almost 13, he was taller, harder. The bones of his face stood out under skin tanned by sun and salt. His green eyes, however, had regained a shine. Not the naive shine of magical hope, but the sharp glint of intentional survival. That shine was due to Mistress Alara. He found her, or she found him, in an alley behind the fish market, soaked in his own water, blood, and despair. Jorn and his thugs had gone too far that night. Torin remembered the taste of metal, the darkness closing in, and then a cold, soft touch, like deep water. Alara gathered him up like a wounded crab, taking him to her waterside shack built on stilts, where the sound of waves slapped the beams. She was a semi-human of the electric eel variety. From the waist down, and from shoulders to hands, her skin was smooth, dark, and faintly luminescent, marked by subtle patterns that resembled the silent discharge of a deep-sea creature. Her face, however, was human, with soft, tired features and delicate, pale gills pulsing behind her ears when she was emotional. Widow of a human fisherman, she made a living mending nets and preparing bait, a solitary, modest trade. For Torin, she wasn't a mother. She was a safe harbor. She gave him a roof, a bowl of seaweed soup, and, more precious than anything, respect. Not pity, but a quiet seriousness that restored his dignity. He, in return, worked like a man possessed. He hauled, mended, fished, protected. The shack had never been so intact, the nets never so well knotted. And it was under that roof, listening to Alara hum sea songs in a half-human, half-aquatic whisper language, that the goddess's tear days ceased to be a distant ghost and became a concrete lifeline. At 13, every teenager was brought before a statue of Ethelwyn to receive a vision, a glimpse of their innate calling. It wasn't magic, it was direction. For someone like Torin, it was the last door before the cliff of eternal insignificance. The day dawned clear. Torin put on the least mended tunic Alara had prepared for him. She adjusted the collar with her strange-skinned hands, her brown eyes serious. "Don't wait for miracles, boy," she said, her voice a trickle of running water. "Wait for truth. And use it, whatever it is." He nodded, his heart pounding so hard he feared breaking his ribs. The central tower of the stranded village of Shells was small, a dark stone cylinder by the sea. Inside, the air smelled of damp incense and moss. In the center, on a pedestal of fossilized shells, stood the statue of Ethelwyn, the Lady of Paths, not the glorious image of Valoria, but a crude carving, her face worn by salt, holding an upturned shell from which once a year dripped a single tear of Wisdoma silvery, ethereal substance that was not water, not a tear, but pure potential concentrate. The village teenagers formed a silent line. They were children of merchants, fishermen, a few young semi-humans. Torin felt the stares piercing him, the wharf orphan, the eel's pet. He kept his back straight, his eyes fixed on the statue. One by one, they knelt. The tear, forming slowly on the shell's edge, fell into the cupped hands of the youth. Some frowned, others smiled weakly, others seemed disappointed. One boy awakened to fine carpentry, a girl to herbal healing, useful skills, honest, nothing to get someone off the wharf. Then it was Torin's turn. He knelt on the cold stone. The goddess's shadow covered him. He looked up at the worn face and thought of Kael. He thought of Alara. He thought of the feel of the slippery fish in his hands, the pain of hunger, the rough texture of the rope that had saved his life countless times. The silver tear formed, shone against the dark stone, and fell. It didn't reach his hands. It floated, hanging in the air between his chest and the statue. Then, like a condensed moonbeam, it shot forth and touched his forehead. The world disappeared. He was no longer in the tower. He was in a place of pure wind and infinite sky. There was no smell of fish, only the cold scent of altitude. In his hands there were no nets, but the solid, perfect weight of a bow made of light and bone. And in his heart there was no direction, but an absolute certainty, a connection so intimate with the air, the trajectory, the distant point, that it was as if he could bend the very space between the arrow and the target. Celestial Archer. The name echoed in his mind, not as words, but as an ancestral call. One of the rarest and most respected combat skills in ATHERIA. Not brute force, it was precision, patience, vision. It was the skill of an elite sharpshooter, a sentinel, a hunter of distant threats. It was a hero skill, not a Dawkins. The vision dissolved. Torin returned to the tower, gasping, hands trembling. An absolute silence enveloped him. Everyone stared, mouths agape. The auxiliary shaman, an elderly lizard man, gaped at him with wide eyes. The sky has spoken, the shaman stammered, his rough voice breaking the silence. Ethewin grants the vision of infinite reach, the celestial archer. The murmur that followed was one of pure shock, looks of envy, of sudden respect, of fear. Torin felt a wave of heat rise from his stomach to his face. It wasn't joy yet. It was a powerful daze, an overwhelming realization. I am not trapped. He stood up, legs weak. Without a word, he turned and left the tower, breaking through the circle of onlookers. He needed to tell Alara. He needed to see her understand, see that silent pride shine in her tired eyes. He ran, his feet pounding on the wharf stones, the sea wind drying the tears that finally escaped, tears of relief, of triumph, of future. The shack on stilts appeared ahead. And then his blood froze. For burly men, wearing beaten leather armor and weathered faces, blocked the entrance. Two canine semi-humans, muzzles drawn back in snarls, flanked them. The center, talking to one of them, was the regional priest. It's the same one who had overseen his blessing 3 years before, his face now a mask of bureaucratic severity. And beside the priest, smiling with an oily satisfaction, was Gome, the most feared loan shark in the stranded village of shells. Pushed out the door, her hands bound by a rough rope, was Alara. Her face was pale, her gills trembled uncontrollably. Ow. Her eyes met Torin's, and in them he saw no surprise, only a deep despair and an overwhelming guilt. Ah, the little hero has arrived, said Gom, his voice a gravelly drag. Perfect. We're just settling a debt. The good lady here took out a considerable loan too. Ah, fix the roof. By medicine? The story changes. She didn't pay. And the law is clear. The priest cleared his throat. The debt was incurred before witnesses with clear interest. By the laws of ATHERIA and the code of the stranded, the debtor incurs debt slavery until repayment. The brand will be applied. Alara let out a muffled moan. I can pay. Give me more time, she pleaded, but her voice was weak, broken. Torin saw the scene unravel. He saw Alara's calloused hands, which had fed him. He saw the shack he'd helped repair. He saw in Gom's eyes a gleam of anticipation that went beyond the debt of a lonely fisherwoman. He didn't think. The movement was faster than reason. He crossed the distance and placed himself between the men and Alara. The debt is hers, Torin said, his voice surprisingly firm. But the body to pay it can be mine. The silence was cutting. Gom raised an eyebrow. The priest looked confused. Lara screamed, Nitrogen monoxide, Torin, don't do it. It's a trap. You don't understand. Creature, growled one of the semi-humans, pulling the rope. Torin ignored him. He looked directly at the priest. You witness my calling. I am a celestial archer. My value as a servant, or as an asset, is incomparably greater than hers. Take me in her place. Nullify her debt. Gom rubbed his chin, his smile widening. His calculating eyes appraised Torin like a rare fish at market. A celestial archer, he murmured. That changes the calculations. A lot. The priest looked troubled. The law allows substitution if the new debtor is accepted by the creditor and if his repayment capacity is greater. But boy, you don't know what you're getting into. I accept, Gom interrupted, triumphant. The boy in place of the eel, the debt is settled. We'll apply the brand to him. Alara collapsed to the ground, sobbing, her bound hands reaching for Torin. He lied, the debt was fake. It's a scheme, Torin. They used me to lure kids with potential. It's to hand them over to him. I'm part of it. Forgive me. Forgive me. Ilara's words hit Torin like physical blows. He heard them, but couldn't process them. The betrayal was too large, too monstrous. his gaze fixed on Alara, and for the first time saw beyond the weary kindness. He saw the fear, the shame, the complicity. She hadn't been his savior. She had been the bait. But it was already too late. Gom took a step forward. The lady's confession is interesting, but irrelevant. The offer was made and accepted before the priest. The substitution is legal. He looked at Torin. For your rare skill, the contract will be for 15 years. 15 years of service to repay the generously reevaluated debt. The priest, pale but bound to legal formality, nodded. It was done. Torin's world shrank to the cold, sharp point of that reality. The joy of being a celestial archer evaporated, replaced by the taste of ashes and iron. He didn't look back when the rough hands grabbed him. The last thing he heard was Alara's rending wail, mixing with the sound of the waves as he was dragged away from the sea into the village's shadows. The cage was in the stuffy attic of one of Gom's warehouses. It was iron, small, smelling of mold and ancient despair. It was there, in the silent darkness, that one of the semi-human guards, for a silver coin, told him the complete truth. Alara was a collector. She identified resilient orphans, gained their trust, and then, when they developed a valuable skill on tier day, an unexpected debt appeared. Their desperation, their sense of honor or gratitude, led them to offer themselves as sacrifices. Gom then sold them on the specialized slave market, splitting the profits with her. Torin hadn't been the first, just the most valuable. The betrayal no longer hurt. He was already numb. What grew inside him was something colder, more dangerous, a steel determination. He would survive, not for Alara, not for Gom, for himself, and for the promise made to a friend under an orange sky. The sale was quick. His status as a young celestial archer attracted a specific buyer, Master Vorlag, a human adventurer of silver rank. His face scarred, and eyes that evaluated people like tools. "Boy," Vorlag said, examining him through the bars. "Your life is about to turn upside down. You'll see horrors you never dreamed existed. You'll get your hands dirty. You'll smell like death. But if you're good, if you survive, you could end up with more power and gold than any little noble in Valoria." Interested? Torin from the cage just nodded. There was no choice. It was only the path ahead, however dark. The years that followed were a true nightmare. Vorlag was a cruel, yet efficient master. Torin, with his brown hair and green eyes, was thrown into dungeons of levels 1 and 2. Then 3. He learned to shoot not at wooden targets, but at the eyes of goblins, the weak points of trolls, the magical cores of uncontrolled constructs. His skill, the celestial archer, flourished in the darkness. He developed a sense of range, an almost magical perception of distances, winds, and trajectories. His arrows seemed to weave death with terrifying precision. He also learned to lose. It was Borin, the dwarf novice, crushed by a stone trap, while Torin tried in vain to disarm the mechanism from a distance. He saw the light in Borin's eyes go out under the dust. There was Lina, the feline semi-human, agile and silent, whose throat was torn out by a shadow wurg as she protected his flank. He heard her gurgle her last breath, her eyes seeking his in a moment of pure panic before fixing on the void. Each death was a knife twisted in his chest. Vorlag mocked. "Feelings are a luxury, boy, and luxuries kill." They were weak. "You are strong. Stay strong or join them." Torin no longer cried, kept the faces of the dead on a silent altar within his mind, and he kept shooting. By 21, he was a veteran. New and old marks crossed his body. His green eyes, once full of fire, were now like frozen ponds, reflecting little. He had reached silver rank in Vorlag's Adventurer Guild of Feet for a slave. The brand of submission on his forearm pulsed faintly, a constant reminder of his debt and his 15 years, which were now nearing their end. That's when Vorlag called him. In the master's tent, the adventurer rubbed his hands, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We have an opportunity, a newly classified rank for dungeon, the Whispering Forges of Keldamir, an abandoned dwarven mine taken by corrupted fire elementals. The mission: retrieve the Forge Master's heart, a runic crystal at the core. The death risk is high, very high." Torin remained silent. He knew what came next. It's your last mission under my command, Vorlag continued. Complete it, bring back the crystal, and the next day, I burn your contract. The brand dissipates. You'll be free, not just from the debt. Free. It was bait. Torin knew it. But it was the only bait he couldn't refuse. Freedom. The word echoed in the emptiness of his chest like a distant bell. Who else is going? He asked, his voice rough from emotional disuse. A small team. You, of course, Dern. Our dwarf tank. Selous, the elven scout. Mira, the human summoner. And Kael, the swordsman. The best that are left. Torin knew them all. Dern, who grumbled, but always shared his ale. Silas, whose elven sarcasm hit a loyal heart. Mira, who treated his wounds with gentle hands. Kael, quiet and reliable, who always covered his back. They weren't friends, they were comrades. And in the dark alleys of dungeons, that was sometimes more important. The descent into the Whispering Forges was a plunge into hell. The air shimmered with heat, smelled of sulfur and molten metal. The walls, once beautiful carved stone, were now black and twisted, pulsing with a sickly orange light. The fire elementals weren't pure flames. They were creatures of ember and hatred, with shapes of rabid dogs, distorted wolves, and worse things. The forge profaned fire wolves. The first assault was a disaster. Dern, with his huge shield, held the line while Silas tried to flank. A firewolf, larger than the others, circled the shield and plunged into the dwarf's gut. Dern didn't even scream. His face under the helm just showed resigned surprise before the flames consumed him from within, making him explode in a shower of embers and molten metal. "Dern!" Mira screamed, her water summoning evaporating before touching the creature. A second wolf leaped at her. Silas threw himself in the way, his short blades flashing. He managed to deflect the attack, but a flaming paw struck him in the chest, piercing the hardened leather armor. The elf fell, gasping, his blood evaporating in the hot air with a sinister hiss. Torin shot arrow after arrow, each finding an Emberia heat core. 2 wolves fell, but there were too many. "Fall back," Kael ordered, his sword flashing in a defensive arc. "Mira, heal Silas. Torin, cover." They retreated down a narrow corridor. Mira knelt beside Silas, her hands glowing with faint healing light. The elf coughed, a wet, terrible sound. "Doesn't work," he whispered, his silver eyes losing focus. "It's too hot inside." He grabbed Mira's arm. "Tell a good story about me." And then his whole body seemed to char, disintegrating into a pile of fine ashes that the hot tunnel wind carried away. Mira let out a choked sob. Kael clenched his jaw, his eyes wet, and then the howls echoed again. More wolves. This time, led by a colossal creature, a living ember alpha the size of a bear. With magma horns and eyes that were pits of infinite fury, the battle was a massacre in slow motion. Mira tried to summon a water elemental, but the ambient heat vaporized it instantly. The alpha attacked her. Kael interposed himself, landing a powerful blow that cracked the creature's ember skull. But one of its flaming paws struck his side, melting the chainmail and the flesh beneath. Kael fell with a hoarse cry. Torin fired frantically. Arrows tipped with frost runes he saved for emergencies. They stuck in the alpha, hissing and crackling, slowing it. He ran to Kael. The swordsman lay on his back, breathing with difficulty, a horrible steaming hole in his flank. "Torin," Kael whispered, dark blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "The crystal in the niche behind the alpha. Take it and go." "I'll get you out of here," Torin said, his voice broken, trying to lift the heavier man. Kael shook his head, a weak movement. Already done. He stared at Torin, and in his eyes, for a second there was no pain, only a deep acceptance. It was a good fight, Archer. His body relaxed. The light in his eyes went out. Torin knelt, alone. The alpha, enraged and damaged, roared, advancing slowly. The lesser wolves surrounded him, their howls filling the hot air like a funeral dirge. He looked at the body Celeste's ashes, the spot where Dern had exploded, Mira's charred body, and now Kael, the last. And then, something inside him broke. It's not fear. The last tether holding him to hope. He stood up, his hand trembling as he drew a final arrow from the nearly empty quiver. It wasn't a special arrow. It was just wood and iron. He knocked it, aimed at the eye of the approaching alpha. He knew it wouldn't matter. It would kill him. And maybe that was better. So much death, so much loss. Where was the freedom in all this? Perhaps it was only in this to stop fighting. The alpha wolf leaped, its lava jaws opening toward the cavern's ceiling, ready to swallow him whole. And then the darkness was torn apart, not by fire, by light. A bolt of pure blue-white energy, cold as the sea's depths, cut through the air and struck the alpha in the neck. The ember creature shrieked a sound of cracking metal and dying fire and was thrown backward. A translucent barrier, looking like solidified water studded with stars, rose around Torin, separating him from the remaining wolves, who howled and recoiled from the cold light. Dazed, Torin staggered. The exhaustion, the pain, the shock, all hit at once. His legs gave way. As the darkness enveloped him, his clouded eyes tried to focus on the source of the light. Coming from the tunnel they had retreated down, a silhouette advanced. It was tall, wrapped in an aura of pulsing aquatic energy. It wasn't Vorlag, it was. Before unconsciousness took him, before his eyes closed on the pain and despair, a final image formed on his exhausted retina. A face he hadn't seen in 8 years. It's older, stronger, marked by authority and power, but unmistakable. Dark, damped hair, brown eyes that once shared a stolen fish, now blazing with devastating oceanic magic. Kael. And then there was only darkness, and the distant echo of a name that was both a war cry and a lament. End of part 2. Thank you for getting this far. Subscribe to the channel and receive more videos like this.